My wife shredded our anniversary photo and said you were just the safer option. I quietly packed my bag. 3 days later, her phone line went silent at the courthouse. For nearly 25 years, I've been the backbone of what everyone called the perfect American family. Doyle Precision Tech isn't just a machine shop anymore. It's a respected manufacturing outfit with over 120 employees depending on my decisions. But more than being the boss, everyone respects. I've been the husband Lana could always count on, and the father Kimber looked up to. At least that's what I thought. There were never any scandals in our marriage. No sleeping on the couch, no slamming doors, no shouting matches that made the neighbors uncomfortable. I never drank, never chased other women, never disappeared for boys' weekends that left Lana wondering I was steady. Reliable present. Just 2 weeks ago, we took our 25th anniversary photo. All of us together. Milana with her perfect smile, Kimber and her new husband Aaron. The golden frame still hangs in the living room. Sometimes I catch myself staring at it, wondering if I was the only one who believed the happiness captured in that moment was real. Saturday morning came with clear blue skies, perfect weather to detail my 2009 Mustang GT before the Mustang Memories exhibition at Ford HQ in Detroit. That car is my pride and joy. I rebuilt it from the frame up, customized every inch. When people ask me why I don't upgrade to a newer model, they don't understand. This car represents something I built with my own hands that nobody can take away. I was mowing the lawn when Kimber's Subaru pulled into the driveway. She's been married to Aaron for 10 months now. Nice kid, electrical engineer with a solid future. She stepped out, waved at me and said she needed to borrow some money for redecorating their apartment. Nothing unusual. I nodded, hugged her, and continued with the lawn while she headed around back to find Lana on the porch. 20 minutes later, I shut off the mower and headed to the porch for some water. I was about 10 feet away when I heard their voices carrying through the still afternoon air. "It was just once, Mom, I was drunk. Don't be such a hypocrite." Kimber's voice had that defensive edge I recognized from her teenage years. "Aaron loves you. How could you do this to him?" Lana sounded tired, disappointed. Then Kimber's words froze me mid-step. "Like you've been seeing Brent for 2 years. You can do it, but I can't." The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped onto the porch, both women turning to me with identical expressions of horror. 25 years of marriage, and I'd never seen Lana's face drain of color so quickly. "Who's Brent?" My voice came out unnaturally calm. "When did you see him?" Lana's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her hands twisted the dish towel she was holding until her knuckles went white. Kimber looked between us, confusion replacing her anger. "Mom said you already knew." I stared at my wife, searching for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding. Some explanation that would make sense. But her eyes, those eyes I'd trusted for a quarter century, couldn't meet mine. "You're misinterpreting things," Lana finally said, her voice steadier than it should have been. "Don't let one careless comment destroy our marriage, Patrick." Kimber stepped closer to her mother. "Dad, you're overreacting. This is between us women. I didn't recognize these strangers standing on my porch." I turned without a word and walked into the house, up the stairs to my office, and closed the door behind me. The framed family photo on my desk caught my eye, and before I knew what was happening, it was in my hand. Then shattered against the wall. I didn't even feel the glass cutting into my palm. Sitting at my desk, memories began flooding back. The night Lana rushed out of dinner claiming her friend was sick, but returned 4 hours later with no explanation. The evening yoga classes during Kimber's high school years that always ran late. The cash withdrawals I never questioned, because I trusted her completely. I typed Brent Carlson into Google, former real estate company director, retired 4 years ago. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that explained why my wife would hide a relationship with him. That night, I confronted Lana in our bedroom. "I asked you once and you chose silence. You said I already knew, but I don't know anything." Tears streamed down her face. "Patrick, please." Turns out I wasn't a good husband after all. I said, the realization settling in my chest like a cold stone. Just a fool who trusted his wife too much. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection, searching for the man I thought I was. Something fluttered from the cabinet, an old photo that had been tucked away. 4-year-old Kimber with her auburn hair and hazel eyes. When she was born, Lana had always said, "She looks just like my side of the family." But looking at that innocent face now, I could only see one truth that had been hiding in plain sight all these years. She doesn't look anything like me. That photo of Kimber sent me spiraling back to 1998, Illinois State University, where I was just a quiet engineering student working part-time at Mac's Auto Garage to pay my way through school. I wasn't the kind of guy who stood out in a crowd, just another Midwestern kid with grease-stained hands and a dream of someday building something that would last. The first time I saw Lana was at a spring party in someone's crowded backyard, red Solo cups everywhere, music blasting from cheap speakers. She wasn't alone. Troy Beckett was draped around her like an expensive Coat-Star quarterback with NFL prospects and the ego to match. He was everything I wasn't, loud, imposing, the guy everyone noticed when he walked in. Next to him, Lana looked like a prize he'd won her smile, never quite reaching her eyes when he bragged about himself to anyone who would listen. That night, I overheard him berating her for talking too long with some guy from her psychology class. I didn't intervene. Wasn't my place. But I noticed how she shrank, how she apologized, even though she'd done nothing wrong. 2 weeks later, I saw her struggling with a flat tire outside the library. Troy was nowhere to be found. "Need a hand?" I asked, already knowing the answer. That was how it started. I became the guy who helped with study notes, who fixed her car when it broke down, who drove her to the emergency room when she had that bad fever during finals week. All the while, she stayed with Troy. "We have plans," she'd say, looking past me. "After he gets drafted, we're getting married." Boss, I never pushed, never crossed lines. Just waited in the wings. The night everything changed. My phone rang at 3 a.m. Troy had been passed over in the NFL draft. His scholarship was gone, his future uncertain, and his response had been to get blind drunk and take it all out on Lana. When I pulled up to that rundown off-campus apartment, she was sitting on the curb, a duffel bag beside her, her left eye swelling shut. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. She stayed at my place for 3 days, then she dropped out of school. We didn't rush into anything physical. I told her I wanted to do things right from the start, and she seemed relieved. 6 months later, we were officially dating. A year after that, we were married in a small ceremony that my father attended just months before cancer took him. Kimber was born a month early according to the doctor's calculations. I never questioned it. Premature births happen all the time. I was too caught up in taking over Dad's shop, too focused on making it successful enough to support my new family. Lana stayed home with the baby, never using that psychology degree she'd worked for. I told myself it was what she wanted. There were days, especially around the anniversary of my father's death, when Lana would become distant melancholy in a way that went beyond normal grief. Years later, I discovered this coincided exactly with when Troy sent her a letter, apologizing, asking to see her again. I never saw that letter. Never knew it existed. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. The 3-day trip to visit relatives in Missouri, that I later discovered through a private investigator, was actually a rendezvous with Troy in St. Louis. The condom wrapper I found in her car that she claimed must have been left by a friend who borrowed it. That night, she called me Tay in her half-sleep, and I convinced myself she was dreaming about some actor in a movie we'd watched. After the confrontation on the porch, I started digging into details I'd brushed aside for years. I printed old bank statements, finding multiple cash withdrawals near the River Park Hotel downtown. I discovered Lana had worked part-time for 2 months at Brent Carlson's real estate company, a man who'd later face allegations of harassing female employees. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I never wanted to see. My search led me to a journal hidden behind her dresser. Most of its pages were intact, but one had been hastily torn out. Only a jagged edge remained. On the adjacent page, a single sentence survived, written in Lana's unmistakable handwriting. "If Patrick ever discovers Kimber might be Troy's, I'll lose everything." The words blurred as I stared at them, the culmination of 25 years of lies resting in my hands. The daughter I'd raised, the bedtime stories, the school projects, the father-daughter dances, the college tuition payments, all of it called into question by 11 devastating words. In that moment, I understood that loving someone too much can blind you completely. I had been so devoted to the idea of our perfect family that I'd become the perfect mark, the steadfast husband who never questioned, never suspected, never saw what was happening right in front of him. The man who raised another man's child believing the lie with all his heart. That journal entry changed everything. The next morning, I cornered Lana in our bedroom, blocking the door so she couldn't escape like she'd been doing for 25 years. Who is Brent Carlson, and how long has it been going on? My voice was unnervingly calm, even to my own ears. Lana's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal's. Patrick, you're blowing this out of proportion. I've been lonely. You're always at the shop or working on that damn car. Don't you dare make this about me. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. One last question and I want a straight answer. Is Kimber my daughter? Her silence was deafening. Not a yes, not a no. Just silence that screamed the truth I already knew. Something snapped inside me. I grabbed the anniversary watch she'd given me inscribed with "Forever Yours" and smashed it against the dresser. The glass shattered. The hands stopped at 9:47. Time of death for our marriage. Get out, I whispered. Patrick, please. Get out. The roar that tore from my throat didn't sound human. Once she was gone, I called Jeffrey Klein. We'd been roommates freshman year before he transferred to law school. Now he was a partner at Madison and Whitmore in Columbus, specializing in family law. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he picked up on the second ring. Jesus Doyle. You sound like hell. I laid everything out, the affair, the possible paternity, the decades of lies. When I finished, the line was quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Ohio's one of the few states that still allows alienation of affection lawsuits. He finally said, if this other guy knowingly interfered with your marriage, you can sue him in civil court. But we need evidence. What about divorce? I can file an emergency petition today with a temporary restraining order on your assets. She won't be able to touch the house, the business, anything. Do it. I said, feeling nothing but cold resolve. When Lana returned that evening, she was crying, begging for another chance. I sat at the kitchen table, unmoved by the tears. I once would have done anything to stop. Jeffrey Klein will be contacting you. I said, all communication goes through him now. The next day, Kimber showed up, eyes red-rimmed. Dad, please don't do this. Mom made mistakes. But mistakes. I cut her off. If your mother were a man who cheated on his wife for 20 years, would you still be defending him? She fell silent, tears streaming down her face. Aaron stood awkwardly in the doorway, watching his wife fall apart, looking at me with a mixture of pity and horror. That night, I sent Aaron an email with an audio file attached, clipped from our doorbell camera. Kimber's confession about her drunken one-night stand. I included only one line. Now you know how it feels. Jeffrey hired a private investigator to dig into Brent Carlson. The results made my blood run cold. Brent Carlson had died in a car accident 4 years ago. The man Lana had been seeing was using a dead man's identity. The investigator tracked Lana's phone locations from the past year. Multiple visits to Riverside Apartments on the west side of town. The tenant, Troy Beckett. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Not some random affair with a real estate director. It was Troy, her college boyfriend, the football star who never made it. The man who'd beaten her and abandoned her all those years ago. She'd been seeing him under a fake name. I didn't call ahead. Didn't warn anyone. Just drove to Riverside Apartments with a package in hand and knocked on door 317. The man who answered barely resembled the Troy. I remembered obesity had swallowed his athletic frame. His hairline had retreated halfway across his skull. An oxygen tank stood beside him, tubes running to his nostrils. His ankles were so swollen they looked like they might burst. Package for Beckett. I said, keeping my voice neutral. Recognition dawned slowly in his bloodshot eyes. Well, well, look what the cat dragged in, Patrick fucking Doyle. Is Kimber my daughter or yours? I asked, dropping all pretense. Troy laughed, a wet hacking sound. You still care. You're the one who paid the bills. I'm the one who provided the sperm. Something primal took over. I lunged forward, ripping the oxygen tube from his face, my fist connecting with his bloated stomach. He wheezed, doubling over. I kept hitting him, years of rage exploding through my knuckles. I didn't stop until something cracked against the back of my head. His wife, a woman as decrepit as he was, wielding what looked like a baseball bat. The police arrived within minutes. I was handcuffed, bleeding from a gash on my scalp, but strangely calm. Troy was screaming about assault, demanding I be locked up. 2 hours later, Jeffrey arrived at the station, immaculate in his tailored suit. He placed a folder on the detective's desk. My client had an audio recording device on his person during the altercation. Mr. Beckett admitted to blackmail and what amounts to emotional extortion of Mrs. Doyle. He slid another document across the table. And here's a copy of a harassment suit filed against Mr. Beckett by a former colleague 6 years ago. Same pattern of behavior. The detective looked between us, then sighed. Mr. Doyle, we're going to let you go with a warning. No more physical confrontations, understood. But you're within your rights to pursue civil action if you choose. Outside the station. Jeffrey grabbed my arm. Are you sure you want to go this far? This gets ugly fast. Patrick? I stared at him, feeling nothing but ice in my veins. No, I said quietly. I want to go even further. News travels fast in small towns. By the next morning, someone had told Lana about my confrontation with Troy. She collapsed in her sister's kitchen, hyperventilating until she passed out. They took her to Meadowbrook, a private mental health facility on the outskirts of town. Acute stress disorder with psychotic features. That's what they called it. I called it karma. I didn't plan to visit her, but something pulled me there anyway. Maybe I needed to see her broken the way she'd broken me. The nursing staff recognized me from the family photos in Lana's room and let me stand outside her door. Through the small window, I could see her curled on the bed, clutching the teddy bear I'd given her on our first anniversary. A silly gift she'd kept all these years. The sight of it in her arms made my stomach turn. She keeps saying you still love her. The nurse told me, her voice gentle, that you'll come take her home soon. She's delusional, I said, and walked away. Back at my house, not ours. Jeffrey laid out our strategy over whiskey that neither of us touched. We're attacking on 3 fronts, he said, spreading documents across the kitchen table. First, we're suing Troy for alienation of affection and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Second, instead of a standard divorce, we're filing for annulment on grounds of fraud. And third, we're going after financial restitution for all expenses related to raising Kimber, backed by the DNA evidence. I stared at the stack of papers. Each signature would be another nail in the coffin of my former life. How long will all this take? Months, maybe a year. But I'll make sure everyone involved feels every second of it. I signed everything that night. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just the scratch of pen on paper sealing fates. The DNA test was just a formality. I already knew what it would show, but seeing the results in black and white still felt like a physical blow. The genetic markers didn't lie. Kimber wasn't my biological daughter. Never had been. The report sat heavy in my hands. Scientific proof of a 24-year lie. When Kimber came to see me, her eyes were hollow. Lana had finally told her everything from her hospital bed. I didn't know, she whispered. Please believe me, Dad. Patrick, I corrected her, my voice flat. From now on, you call me Patrick, not Dad. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I'm still the same person you raised. No, I said. You're the physical embodiment of your mother's betrayal. I don't blame you for existing, Kimber, but I can't be your father anymore. The fallout was swift and merciless. Aaron filed for legal separation the day after I sent him the recording. He moved in with his brother across town. Kimber packed up and went to her grandmother's house, unable to face either of us. Lana remained at Meadowbrook, heavily medicated. Her mother called me, her voice quavering with a mixture of shame and desperation. Patrick, I'm begging you, don't make Kimber's paternity public. She's innocent in all this. Sign the divorce papers today. I replied, no contest, no claims on my assets. Lana walks away with nothing but her personal belongings. Do that, and Kimber's paternity stays between us. She agreed without hesitation. Troy's life crumbled even faster than mine had. His real name appeared in court documents that became public record. His landlord evicted him for property damage after our fight. His wife, a woman I hadn't even known existed until that day, left him taking what little they had. His disability benefits were suspended, pending investigation into fraud claims Jeffrey uncovered. Online people found his social media accounts flooding them with so much vitriol that they were permanently shut down. I became methodical in my revenge. I canceled all of Lana's credit cards, changed the passwords on our joint accounts, had her car repossessed while it sat in her sister's driveway, left a formal notice pinned to the front door of our house, giving her 72 hours to remove her possessions or have them considered abandoned. Then came the countermove I hadn't anticipated. Lana's father, a retired judge I'd always respected, hired a family law attorney who petitioned the court to mandate joint counseling sessions before proceeding with the divorce. 3 sessions both parties present with a court-appointed therapist. It's a stalling tactic. Jeffrey explained, disgust evident in his voice. They're hoping if you two talk it out, you'll soften your position. Can we fight it? We can, but it'll delay everything by months. Easier to just do the 3 sessions and move on. That night in Jeffrey's office, the dim light casting shadows across his face, he tossed a folder onto his desk. They're forcing joint therapy. Are you sure you can sit through 3 sessions with that woman without strangling her? For the first time in weeks, I felt my lips curl into something resembling a smile. No, I admitted, but I'll talk to finish this. The mandatory therapy sessions began on a Tuesday morning in a beige office that smelled of stale coffee and air freshener. Dr. Clarice Monahan sat between us, her silver-rimmed glasses perched on a nose that had clearly been broken at least once. Her reputation preceded her a therapist who'd handled over 300 infidelity cases, and according to Jeffrey, didn't take bullshit from either side. Lana arrived dressed like she was attending a funeral, all in black, her face gaunt from weeks at Meadowbrook. She immediately tried to sit next to me. I moved my chair away. Let me be clear from the start, I said before Dr. Monahan could even begin her introduction. I'm here because the court ordered it. I have no intention of reconciliation. I'm here to end things, not heal them. Dr. Monahan nodded, making a note on her pad. Understood, Mr. Doyle, Mrs. Doyle. How do you feel about that statement? Lana dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I think Patrick is hurt and angry, but 25 years isn't something you just throw away. 25 years of lies isn't a marriage, I countered. It's a hostage situation. The first session was a waste of time, Lana cried. I sat stone-faced, Dr. Monahan observed. The second session was different. Maybe it was the medication adjustment. Or maybe Lana finally realized she had nothing left to lose. But she started talking. Really talking. I never stopped seeing Troy even after marrying Patrick. She admitted, staring at her hands. I felt indebted to him. I'd abandoned him when he failed, when his football career ended. And Kimber. Dr. Monahan asked the question I couldn't bring myself to voice. I don't think she's Troy's, but I can't be certain. Lana's voice was barely audible. The timing, it could be either of them. Why Patrick? Dr. Monahan pressed. Why marry him if you were still involved with Troy? Lana looked up, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. Because Patrick was so good. Too good it made me feel unworthy. Troy, he made me feel normal. Flawed, like I deserved to be. I laughed, a harsh sound that made both women flinch. So you punish me for loving you by making me raise another man's child. There was no third session. Instead, Jeffrey filed our lawsuit the next morning. The paperwork was brutal in its precision annulment on grounds of fraud, rather than divorce plus damages against Troy for the cost of raising Kimber from birth to age 24. The evidence was irrefutable, DNA tests confirming I wasn't Kimber's biological father. The audio recording of Troy's crude admission, you paid the bills. I provided the sperm. Bank statements showing Lana had been sending Troy money for over 13 years, money from our joint account. The local newspaper picked up the story, historic annulment case in Ohio. Tests limits of marital fraud. Everything became public. What started as a legal proceeding turned into a social media witch hunt. Someone posted the story on Reddit, and within days, wife's 25-year affair and non-biological child was trending. Troy's address leaked, people spray-painted his door red. Neighbors banged on his windows at night. His already precarious health deteriorated. Lana wasn't spared either. Her parents, pillars of the community, publicly disowned her. Her bank accounts were frozen as part of the legal proceedings. The car I'd bought her was repossessed. Her cell phone on my family plan was shut off. Her credit cards were canceled. Kimber became collateral damage, unable to leave her grandmother's house without being called the product of betrayal by strangers who recognized her from social media. She stopped calling, stopped trying to see me. The weight of it all pressed down on me until I couldn't breathe. I needed to escape. Not just the house or the town, but the entire situation. I cashed in 2 weeks of vacation time and booked a Caribbean cruise with the explicit instruction that I was not to be contacted for any reason short of death. On the second day at sea, I met Emily Sloan, 40 years old. Red hair cut in a stylish bob, divorced after her husband slept with her cousin. She sat next to me at the bar, ordered a Scotch neat, and said, "You look like you're having exactly as shitty a year as I am." I laughed a genuine laugh, the first in 6 months. We spent the next days talking. She didn't ask for my whole story, and I didn't offer it. She told me about her life as an HR consultant, her passion for restoring vintage motorcycles, her collection of first-edition mystery novels. Normal conversations that had nothing to do with betrayal or revenge or DNA tests. On the 5th night, after too many drinks under a blanket of stars, we ended up in my cabin. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, she propped herself up on one elbow. "This doesn't have to be complicated," she said. "We should just live fully while we can." The day before the cruise ended, Emily was gone. The steward handed me an envelope with my t-shirt inside, the one she'd borrowed the night before, and a note that simply read, "Don't come looking unless you're sure." I returned home to find the legal proceedings moving forward without a hitch. Jeffrey had eviscerated Troy's attempt at a countersuit. Lana's father had withdrawn from her defense team after reading the full evidence file. The annulment was all but guaranteed. Yet I felt hollow. The revenge that had consumed me for months now tasted like ash in my mouth. A week after my return, I was washing the Mustang in my driveway as the sun began to set. The familiar routine of soap and water, the methodical cleaning of each panel and chrome fixture had always been my meditation. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the footsteps behind me, until something soft hit the back of my head. I turned to find Emily standing there, my old t-shirt at my feet, her eyes blazing with the intensity that took my breath away. "This time," she said, "I choose to stay." The legal battle ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. After months of depositions and filings, the judge ruled that an annulment was too complex to prove fraud from the beginning. However, she granted an uncontested divorce, and since Lana had withdrawn her countersuit after the evidence mounted, awarded her nothing from our shared life. "You get what you came for," Jeffrey told me over lunch at his club. "She leaves with nothing but her clothes and personal effects. Everything else, the house, the business, your retirement account, stays with you." I nodded, feeling neither victory nor defeat, just a dull finality. "And she's out of the house when?" 48 hours, court officers will supervise the removal of her belongings." Kimber showed up at my office the next day, eyes red and swollen. She'd lost weight, and her usually impeccable appearance had given way to unwashed hair and wrinkled clothes. "Please," she begged. "Mom has nothing left. Can't you show some mercy?" I looked at this young woman, not my daughter by blood, but someone I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with math homework, walked down the aisle. "Your mother lived a 25-year lie." I said, my voice steady. "She's been shown mercy far too many times. She loved you in her way," Kimber insisted. "Her way wasn't love, it was convenience." I turned back to my computer screen. This conversation is over. Surprisingly, it was Aaron who reached out next. He requested a meeting, arrived punctually at my office, and sat across from me with the same quiet dignity I'd always respected in him. "I'm filing for divorce," he said without preamble. "Not separation divorce." "I'm sorry," I replied, and meant it. "Don't be. I'm taking responsibility for my part in choosing poorly." He hesitated. "Actually, I came to ask about a job. I heard you need a production supervisor." The request caught me off guard. "You want to work for me, after everything?" You're the only person in this whole mess who's been straightforward. Aaron said, you knew about Kimber's indiscretion, but you didn't weaponize it. You told me privately, man to man. You let me make my own choice. He leaned forward. I don't know whose daughter Kimber is, but I know you're someone I want to learn from. He started the following Monday. One final piece of business remained. I drove to St. Mary's Care Center, a facility for indigent patients with chronic health issues. Troy Beckett had been admitted after his eviction with no family willing to claim responsibility for his care. I found him in a shared room, an oxygen mask over his face, staring at the ceiling with vacant eyes. He didn't notice me at first. I stood silently at the foot of his bed, not out of respect, but because I had nothing left to say to him. Instead, I handed the nurse a folder. What's this? She asked. Legal documentation for his file. I explained quietly, a pending civil suit that will remain open after his death, and a photograph. She opened the folder, saw the picture of grown-up Kimber, read the note I'd attached, never your daughter, still your consequence. The nurse nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of what I was asking. When Troy finally noticed me and our eyes met, something broke inside him. Tears rolled down his sunken cheeks, followed by convulsions that sent the nurse running for help. I walked away without looking back. Lana moved in with her cousin across state lines. With no assets, no reputation, and former friends blocking her calls, she was effectively erased from the community she'd been part of for decades. She attempted a reconciliation service at her church, but the pastor himself asked her not to return, citing ongoing disruption to the congregation. A handwritten letter arrived at my office 6 months later. Her familiar script on the envelope, I returned it unopened. Emily moved into my lakeside house that spring, bringing only what fit in her SUV books clothes, a vintage record player, and a half-restored 1972 Honda motorcycle that now occupied a corner of my garage. She took over HR and soft skills training at Doyle Precision, implementing policies that improved retention and workplace satisfaction within months. We didn't rush into marriage. What we had was simpler, more honest. We wrote a book together about relationship collapse and rebuilding, which found a small but dedicated audience. When a local podcast asked me about my journey, I finally spoke publicly. I don't regret how I handled it. I told the interviewer, I forgive myself, not her, and I believe that some wounds, if they can't be healed, should be excised completely. Life settled into a new rhythm. Troy died that winter alone in hospice care. His obituary, a 3-line notice that no one responded to Lana, lived in obscurity. Working retail jobs, shunned by the society that once embraced her. Kimber cut off contact, unable to reconcile the versions of her mother she'd known. Aaron flourished under my mentorship, eventually heading our new automation division. And me, I rebuilt myself the same way I'd rebuilt my Mustang, piece by piece, replacing what was damaged, strengthening what remained until the whole was stronger than before. One morning I stood on our deck watching Emily water her herb garden, wearing my old t-shirt from the cruise. The sun caught her hair, turning it to fire. I once wanted justice. I thought feeling something like peace settle over me. But then I realized peace is the real justice, and I've reclaimed it. In my own way,